Ready.
Call the meeting to order. First order of business, pledge allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Consider of any changes, additions, or removals to the agenda.
Just like to table number 8, which is the employee policy for the July meeting, and number 11, which is the bid for the transfer station backhoe replacement. We're just looking for some clarification on one of the bids.
Wait, you're talking
Yeah, he's
8?
got them backwards.
Sorry.
Yeah, we list them backwards. That's okay. It's 8 and 11.
8 and 11.
Okay, approved minutes of previous meeting, May 19th, 2025.
Make a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
Second.
Second. Any discussion? Being no discussion, everybody in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Guys opposed? Guys have it. Comments from citizens? It's none. Moving on. Department head reports for May.
You have them, I handed out 2 from municipal office and grants coordinator, as well as the PD.
What was the alarm issue at the high school? You know about that? I just saw it in buildings and grounds. But it did get me thinking. I heard some talk from the public about the TRSU talking about that building for use. I don't know if that's something that has been.
There has been some preliminary discussion that was brought to me about and again, it's very TRSU exploring using some of the space there as a lease for, I guess, adaptive learning. I had a very, very brief conversation with Mary Barton about it.
Okay.
We're going to revisit that and probably have some ideas for or a proposal, if they so wish, for the July meeting.
Okay.
I'm not really sure. They were looking at maybe a room or 2, but again, that would be, I believe, there also has been some talk that I think one of the programs in Springfield may be closing, which is the occupational, and I could be completely wrong with this, but this is what I've heard, so I think they're trying to find some places for some of their other programming.
Okay. And I know it'll get away from us quick, but I don't know if that's high school building committee or anything like that, because it's going to be get to budget season and questioning that again.
Any other discussions on department head reports? Okay, moving on. Select board to review and update draft rental registry.
So you do have in your packet, since our last meeting, an updated version of the rental registry. Ms. Carter is here to discuss it. It was, since our last meeting, it was discussed again at the trustees meeting. So the copy that is in your packet is what is provided from the planning commission since then. So I will defer to Terry if that is all right.
Okay, probably the only changes that were made since you saw it last time is the part where the occupancy. I had talked to a lawyer about, Chris Callahan, about occupancy would be determined by the most restrictive thing like water, septic, and after the discussion with the select board and with the trustees last month, and also talking to Brendan briefly about it, the occupancy on Chief Bensley would be determined by number of bed spaces within a dwelling. All bed spaces, including stored mattresses, shall be used to calculate the total occupancy number of a unit. And then I defined bed sit space. Chief Ben had given me a definition of bed space. And I think I added something too. Yeah, I added rental administrator. And so, yeah, occupancy would be determined by bed spaces and the NFDA 101 fire codes. So that's probably the biggest change that was made here.
I appreciate that, Miss Carter. It's NFPA?
Oh, it's PA?
I believe so.
Gotta fix that one.
And Mr. Whalen, thanks for attending tonight. May I ask you, could you just give a brief summary of what Chapter 24 is of the 101?
Can you hear me or do I need to get up?
That mic will
I
pick you
think
up.
the mic, yeah, you can move the mic to you.
So I guess to give more backstory, Vermont currently adopts the 2015 edition of NFPA 1, NFPA 101, and then goes on through the 2015 edition of the Vermont Fire and Building Safety Code. As of, they're saying this fall, they will adopt new codes. They've been saying that for a long time, but I think that's actually coming to fruition. And that'll be the 2021 NFPA codes, and then the Vermont Fire and Building Safety Code, and then there's a different set of codes for new construction. NFPA 101 is the Life Safety Code, and everything in that code book is about keeping people safe in different types of occupancies. So, as an example, it has 1 and 2 family structures, and then breaks that down further in occupancies of, let me back up before I get into that. So there's 1 and 2 family, multifamily, apartment buildings, and then it breaks it down into businesses, assembly, daycares, educational, et cetera. There's a whole list of all those different, and then there's a different set of rules for every single one of those codes. And then the state then modifies those codes through their the Vermont Fire and Building Safety Code. So you really have to kind of correlate one with the other to follow that all. But it is the life safety code for keeping people safe in a building. It's about life safety, and then the fire code is about keeping buildings safe.
Got it. Thank you.
Another change I just want to point out is in section 4, number 7, I can't remember if it was suggested by your board or the trustees that I think it was spoken, that I spell out the insurance thing that I know Scott Bates, you were concerned about. And so I wrote it in there. The town immunity is limited to 100,000. The last couple of sentences here. This dates back to sovereign immunity. If it exceeds the town's insurance limit, it takes precedence. It was suggested I put that in writing, so I put that in there.
And while we're on section 4, Terry, just a couple, if you go to number 2, you list as, and I know I've gone over this before, property management company, where it probably should say rental property
Rental property management company?
or an property management company, because it's just really about rentals.
Okay.
And there is a difference.
Okay, so wait, tell me exactly what to put. Rental property management or property management company? Both of those?
Right.
Okay.
And I have a couple questions here, actually. How did we come up with 15 minutes?
That was from Chief Whalen.
And why 15 minutes? I only say this, Ben, because some of these businesses have been, doing this for 20 years. And if they have somebody that does their call and responds every time and lives a half hour away, why would we make them change to somebody 15 minutes away? And is this 15 minutes for, everything? Because 90% of your calls probably have nothing to do with fire and safety. So I'm just saying, why 15 minutes for responding?
I think 15 minutes in general was a number that we came up with. I think as an example, I'll use Chester's. It says that you have to be within Windsor or Windham County. And so as you think about that, to me, that's too broad of an area. I would be okay with half an hour.
To respond to what though?
So it'd be to respond, in my eyes, for fire safety and,
Right.
and so on, would be that there's a key holder that's responding there to give us access to that building.
So could we change that? I mean, does it have to be 15 minutes if this property has a knockbox? Is 15 minutes important? I mean, if you get there first and you have access, I just think 15 minutes doesn't.
Again, I would be
Give a lot of
agreeable to pushing that time a little bit further. I wouldn't go any more than half an hour. And my point in case being on if we roll out to a fire alarm at 1 o'clock in the morning and I spent about an hour and a half at a place on Christmas Eve waiting for a key holder to turn the building over to. Certainly I kicked all the other folks free, but we shouldn't be sitting there waiting for someone to turn that building over to for that amount of time.
So if they had a knockbox, then
The Knox box is
half hour
great.
would be-
It gives us entry. Typically, I would still like to be able to turn that building over to somebody.
right, there's no guarantee that anybody from Ludlow's going to be there in 15 minutes.
You could make it a mileage radius too.
Yeah.
And I'd be okay with that as well.
Okay, I'm just it just seems like a short time to me.
Originally it said within Windsor County, but
Right.
you can change it to 30 minutes.
And if they have a knockbox, it won't make a difference. True?
Well, no, because he said he'd like to be able to turn the building.
Yeah.
If there's an issue, he wants to be able to turn the building over to somebody, not have the responsibility of it.
Right. But that's after your first response. I mean, that's going to be a little bit of time before you.
Yes, but I guess to use Windsor County as an example, Bethel is part of Windsor County, so that would be over an hour plus that it would take somebody to drive there, and to me, that's too long.
Right. No, I agree. An hour is too long, but a half hour is not out of the question.
Don't disagree.
Can I just ask one more question, Jerry? You have it that the registry will start September 1st. Why September 1st? Because most of your rentals they start November 15th and go through. We seem to have a problem with getting these properties looked at, and it always doesn't happen in a month. I know we had a couple of them up at Lakewood that happened fast, but not all of them happen fast. Why couldn't it be July 1st?
Well, that was a Rose, when I met with, I've met with Rose, I've met with everybody to get their input. That was her idea because she doesn't want the money coming in the same time as the property taxes, but it could be switched to November 1st. It's, it's just,
Right, I'm just
and
saying.
plus I thought it would be enough time for this to get enacted this year too, and get past the 40-day requirement, for somebody to contest it with a petition. I thought we could start it this year if I picked a date in the fall. But I'm not married to September. I'm not gonna die on that horse, you can pick a different.
It just seems like we have a lot of rentals in town to try and get them all inspected between September and November 15th, when most rentals start.
Yeah, I'm fine with November 15th, if that's what you want.
No, I'm fine with July 1st or somewhere,
Well,
plenty
we
of
just
time to
don't
get
want the
through it.
money, Rose, that was a Rose input. She doesn't want the money convoluted with property taxes and it's gonna come in the same envelope. She wanted to make sure the funds were kept separate and that was her input. But
I gotta believe keeping the funds separate should be a pretty easy
Yeah, I don't
bookkeeping.
think that's gonna be.
I don't think that should be.
so do you
don't
want
think
it
that
to
should
be
be an issue.
July? Is that a general consensus?
Well, I'm just saying,
Yeah.
you're not giving them a lot of time to get inspected.
Well, yeah,
Who's
they're
gonna
gonna,
do it in that short a time?
they're gonna self-inspect the first year.
Some of them are, not
Yeah.
all.
I'm fine with July.
Just
That's
a-
what,
Just a thought, I mean,
that's what the board wants.
even
Also-
August, I mean, something other than September, giving them 2 months.
Yeah, August is fine.
There's gonna be a whole separate payment portal
Yeah.
on the registry anyway. It'll be very separate. I don't think that'll be an issue. I actually like the July 1st idea. I think that's new fiscal year, yeah. It's fine with me too.
Justin, can I have a quick moment? So I'll read it right out of the code. So NFPA 101, the goal of the code is to provide an environment for the occupants that is reasonably safe from fire by the following means. And it talks about protection of occupants not intimate with an initial fire development and improvement of survivability of occupants, intimate with the initial development of fire. And then to correct myself on NFPA 1 is really just, I'm just going to read the same part. So the purpose of NFPA 1 is the goals of the code shall be to provide a reasonable level of safety, property protection, and public welfare from hazards created by fire, explosion, and other hazardous conditions. I just wanted to
Thank you
correct
for that.
myself on that.
So then should everything say NFPA 1 and 101? Should it say both? Our ordinance?
I would say NFPA 101 and the Vermont Fire and Building Safety Code.
Okay.
It is a little off topic to where you folks are at right this moment, but I did have some conversations with both the regional manager, Patrick Banks, and Deputy Director Landon Wheeler. And when we are ready to get an MOU for inspection of rentals, that I feel confident that will come to be. I asked if that was something. I'd rather not start working on that until we're ready to actually do that, and he agreed that don't start until we are ready to take it over.
That's great information. Thank you. Ms. Carter, I had a question in regards to, I guess it's section 4, E and F on page 4. I might be reading it incorrectly, but is the second sentence on E almost the exact same sentence of F? The only difference is other persons using a dwelling and other persons occupying a dwelling.
Yeah, I'm not sure what that's redundant. As I told you, I originally started with West Windsor's until I started to get input from everybody else. If you don't think it's necessary, we can take it out. I think they say the same thing.
Anybody else? Seem
I
that
think it
that's
is redundant.
We're gonna have our town council look this over.
He
anyway
already
moving forward.
has. We've made a few changes to it though, so we should probably look it over again.
Well, I'm hoping I'm reading it wrong and you didn't leave that in there, but.
So when we first started talking about short-term or rental, which I noticed this is still short-term rental, it was under the idea of safety. That being the purpose. And just like the purpose of this document, purpose of this ordinance is to promote and protect the public health, safety, and welfare of the town, to preserve the residents' right to quiet enjoyment of their homes and properties, and to ensure safety of occupants of short-term rentals. And I think we're veering into outside of safety stuff that, not that it's not stuff that we want to make sure is good, but in order to implement something like this, it needs to be doable and realistic. I think the septic and water stuff is questionable to me because it's not based on occupancy. And correct me if I'm wrong, but you get a sewer allocation for 1 to 3 bedrooms. It's not based on occupancy. Same thing with water. We have that information. We have the property card, we have that, and hey, we know it's a 3-bedroom. They're built for a 3-bedroom. The software will say, oh, they're advertising a 4-bedroom, and we will flag that. So I want to be careful about, what is the goal of it, and it seems like it's becoming a much larger document. We discussed sewer and septic stuff back when we had a registry committee, and I haven't heard it discussed again until we received this document. And I don't believe like the planning commission as a group has been working on this document. I think it was taken from West Windsor, plugged in for Ludlow, and we can definitely work with it, but I think it's important that we understand what is our goal and purpose of this ordinance and then find stuff that works there versus just pulling another other pieces there.
The sewer and water is only in the over 8 occupancy section of this.
Well, it says an application for short-term rental registration for dwelling units with capacity of greater than 8 occupants shall require compliance with subsection C above, plus the following.
So it's putting extra scrutiny on the higher capacity.
I think it's putting I guess it's the way that the septic stuff or sewer and wastewater works. It's not set up for occupancy based stuff. And if we want to move to that, then, the 3-bedroom apartment I'm living at with me and my wife, 2 people. I think it gets very gray if we go into occupancy.
So you're saying,
You
just to make sure I understand, you're saying we should go with the septic card, or the septic and water versus occupancy.
I'm questioning why are we getting into that at all if we're focused on safety.
I think that's an easy way we already have all that data, right? Like that's also another avenue, right? If someone's they've got a house, right, then they've got a 3-bedroom hooked on, but we went through and the fire inspection said, yeah, you're good for 16.
It's a 3-bedroom, they're good for 16.
If it's a 3-bedroom, right? But but that's where can you get 3 bedrooms in 16?
Yeah.
I don't know. Right.
I don't think that's the issue. I think the concern at the time was the size of your leach field. It wasn't being on town sewer, it was the size of your leach field and putting too much capacity on it and failing it.
Right. Because that is a public hazard.
And it's a public hazard.
I think we should keep that language in there for greater than 8 occupants, but I think the problem lies with the 8 occupants. Maybe it needs to be bed spaces, because that's what it's defined as in this document.
Chris Callahan wanted it in there just because he said that it's enforceable.
So what do we do for the 3-bedroom that has 16 people? Are we charging them more?
I
If
think
they're on town
occupants, I
sewer?
think you pointed out a good,
I agree that there's a problem
Yeah.
with where you've got basically 2 sets of standards, right? Are you within your 3-bedroom, right? And you have 16 people in the 3-bedroom, you pay for 3 bedrooms, but also imagine if that was on a septic design for 3 bedrooms, of which is 6 people, right? Separate of being on town, which that in itself then creates the hazard that Brett brings about. I mean,
I guess it gets I see that very limiting where, hey, you have someone who, they're renting out a few times a year. Their septic can handle it. There's never been an overflow, anything like that. The lakes is a big area that I see of issue where it's something that's worked forever. They don't even have a design plan. They've been renting for 30 years. It's been a camp. They haven't had any issues. They haven't had to replace it. How are you going to provide proof that, hey, I can handle this?
are there over 8 occupant dwellings on
Oh,
Lake
I'm
Rescue
sure.
that would have 2
I know there's
bedrooms
one
or
that's 9
occupants?
occupants, right
How
on the
many
lake.
bedrooms?
4 or 5.
And they obviously have a engineered design for their.
Well, no, I bet they don't. I
It's a
bet
large
they
house.
have a. Well, no, I guess that. I think we all. I am very aware that there are places on the lake that have septic systems that were built in the 70s or 80s. They didn't have design plans. They're grandfathered in. If anything fails, then they're putting in a super fancy system. But until that fails, they're grandfathered in, and whatever happens, it works until it happens.
I think it's important to protect in the sense of like having those fields, right? I mean, I don't know how you encompass it to not muddy the water. That's the part I understand. Like it can be the way it's worded, it's very muddy, right? Because like you could theoretically be that 3-bedroom apartment on the municipal sewer, and you could also be the 3-bedroom apartment and an ADU with a septic, right? And that septic was built for 6 people, and they rent it out, you know, in theory, right, when we're talking, they might have rented out 3 times a year and it's fine. But what about if they now rent it out all year long? That's a totally different use.
I mean, I think there are places, and the way I understand Vermont septic is once you go to that 4th bedroom, then it's 1 person. So bedroom 4, 5, 6 are 1 occupant. So even the way things are built for private use, they can be exceeded.
Sure, I just don't think we should discount that form of public safety, you know, and say, oh, fire is the only thing we think is bad, right? Like this covers that. I don't know how you make the language better to cover both and eliminate that gray area. What do you think, Brett?
I think the health officer's getting old. Yeah, I don't know how you're gonna define, how you're gonna separate that. I mean, I think you wanna protect yourself to a point that if it does fail, that you can cover your bases.
Right, because like in theory, right, like this being a rental, you'll have more scrutiny,
Right,
right? Versus, I mean, how often is people going around checking if a
Sewer.
field's failed?
right.
I mean, unless a neighbor complains,
Complaints.
right? I mean,
But then it's in the registry and they say, oh, they're renting it, okay.
yeah. Okay.
The other thing I think is the there you don't need occupancy for greater than 8 doesn't mean you necessarily have to have a manual activated alarm system, and the state does not do yearly inspections for that. You have your inspection for 16 people, and that's good until you change it, or codes change maybe, Ben. I don't know, but that document is good for a certain period of time. If we wanted to have our own inspections or requirements for yearly, then that's another.
Yeah, so as far as the fire alarm and other items of that nature go, they get a TQP inspection, so technically qualified person, and that is done by someone licensed to do that. So a fire alarm company would come in and do those inspections, a sprinkler system company would come in and do those inspections, and essentially the fire marshal's report is saying you shall do these things, and that way if they're not done, the liability then falls back to the owner.
I think those are, the language is given as an example in this
Okay.
case, right? Because it says fire measures like manual activator, right? So the term like doesn't say, so it's on page 3, number 2.
Thank you.
And so the term like, I believe, is in the sense to give an idea of what, if you weren't familiar with NFPA 101, chapter 26, which I'm not familiar with that specific chapter, that'd give you an idea of what the term additional fire safety measures mean. I agree that not every place is gonna need those 4 specific measures, but I think the term like makes it as an example.
Okay.
Mr. Whalen, if I may ask you another question about chapter 26. It might be chapter 24. I'm not familiar with the codes either. But bedroom size dictates the max occupants in regards to proper egress.
No, so the code will state that every bedroom and every living space is required to have a primary and secondary means of escape, and then breaks it. So it could be a bedroom the size of this room, or it could be a bedroom the size of the upstairs auditorium. There's no limit to those bed spaces as long as it has proper egress. And then there's a list of what proper egress is. And as an example, if you put in a sprinkler system, then you only need 1 egress. If you have a door that leads directly to the outside, you only need 1 form of egress.
Excuse me, Ben, is that chapter 26 or is it chapter 24?
So it would be both.
Both, okay, thanks.
Those are both occupancies, and then they will reference you to different things. But
So in the terms then, in reference to not just that one specific note in number 2 under Delta on page 3, it's just a clarification for in writing. Should they all just say with the current NFPA 101 and whatever you'd already said, just to make sure, so you're not singling out a particular chapter, or should you cite a particular chapter?
we can cite 101. We could also.
You see where like I'm saying, like if we have
No.
one
So how do we
chapter-
not come back here every year and
Right.
change this when
Right.
something changes? So. Approved by the State of Vermont Division of Fire Safety. I would say, I do think that if you put NFPA 101 in the Vermont Fire and Building Safety, the currently adopted version of NFPA 101 in the Vermont Fire and Building Safety Code, that would cover you for at least the next decade.
So take out chapter 26.
So currently adopted NFPA 101 in Vermont Building and Safety Codes. Okay, thank you.
Wouldn't that be assumed that it's currently adopted? No?
No, you show us her.
Okay.
And I would do the state.
Right,
Adopted.
I'm gonna add that in every place, the state and the
State.
and the NFPA. So ready to go to the public hearing? Woo-hoo.
I think the language in section 4, part B is altered and fine. I think adding that quick detail that Mr. Whalen said is a great idea. I'm in favor of the liability insurance. There is some contention with the sewer septic. But I do think it needs to be in there in some regard.
I think we need to have a very clear understanding of how this gets implemented, because you don't want to botch it. And there's a lot the softwares can do. If we're requiring people to submit their allocation, their septic designs, all of that, I imagine they need to do a flow test with their well or something. That is a lot of work on someone from the town of Ludlow. That's hiring.
I mean, just pulling a property card for
So
1,000
like,
rentals.
well, no, that's done with the software. We give them access to our property cards. We know that, hey, 123 Main Street, they have a listing on Airbnb. We grab that, we match it. We know it's John Smith. All of that gets pulled up when you enter your property info. All of that comes and matches, and then the software can either say, we can have it go, yep, this matches. He submit his fee. He's doing 8 or less. Here's his self-certification. Boom, he's good. Or we can say, we can have someone from the town go in and, yep, looks good, check, good. The insurance, the sewer, wastewater stuff, that's where it gets a lot more manual entry. Do we need to have a commercial liability policy for that? Or do we, is the homeowner policy suffice? That's where it gets more detailed. And making sure that we have the bandwidth to do it. The way I see it right now, you're probably at least a half-time person facilitating that. Getting it, I think sitting down with the companies with, hey, this is kind of where we're looking at for an ordinance. How is this implemented and done, I think is a piece of that, and figuring out what we want them to do, they can send the letters out for us automatically, or we can print them off and mail them ourselves. But that's a piece that we don't want to botch this. The compliancy rates that I believe it was Granicus was saying was 80% compliance in year one. So that's some solid
high bar.
revenue. If it's done right.
I think meeting with the company, they have people that help with these ordinances.
And they do
opinions.
have that.
And they also have VTSTRA, right?
Vistra,
Yeah, that will help with this. And I don't know what they would say to this document. So if you're renting a short-term rental and you have a 3-bedroom and your sewer allocation is for a 3-bedroom, what am I missing?
Nothing. But how are you going to prove that based on occupancy, our sewer allocations are not based on occupancy?
Based on
It's
bedrooms.
based on
though.
bedrooms.
Yeah. But if you're advertising for a 5-bedroom short-term rental, but your sewer allocation is only a 3-bedroom,
Correct.
obviously that's going to ping as a violation.
Yeah, but it would
which we-
ping on the property card of, hey, you have a 3-bedroom, unless our
Time to update your sewer allocation.
yeah, and it could be something where if I think it's become apparent we have some things are off with our you have a 3-bedroom on your property card, that's what it's selling for, but you have allocation for 2. That's a another can of worms that would need to get cross-referenced, but I think it puts a lot more work on the town, and it doesn't make registering an easy process. You want people to register, you do make it as simple as possible. If we can connect the property card, don't have them upload the property card. We already have the info.
That's right. And the confirmation that the sewer septic capacity is at least equal to the requested short-term rental dwelling unit capacity would be found on that. We have that information.
We have it in the Excel sheet, yeah.
In terms of the insurance, most towns have insurance carved out in these ordinances. I don't know what it looks like because I'm not a short-term rental operator, but there is a homeowner's policy that then you could get an add-on for it. I'm missing the word right now.
Yeah.
But,
I don't think that necessarily covers liability. I know some of them do, some of them.
so
I think most of these other towns have a short-term rental, what do you call it? Short-term rental endorsement as part of their insurance. It's required in Plymouth
that was the word.
and Woodstock.
And my focus on that is we let every other business operate without requiring insurance. We, issue liquor licenses. We are not, hey, we prove insurance. If that's where we're moving, that's not the hill I'm gonna die on, but I know that adds an extra layer for us to manage and make sure people are up to date with that.
If we're going to do a permitting process in the effects to make it safe, we should require that they have proper coverage in case an emergency happens. I know that just in my business selling liquor, I have to carry liquor liability insurance in addition to homeowners insurance in addition, and it's about to be state mandated by July 1st, 2026, if it's due to pass. So the preemptive insurances mandates I believe are coming.
Yeah.
And I don't know, that's just different can of worms. I don't know if it's ready for public. I don't know if this is ready for a public meeting yet. I think we should sit down with the company, whatever company it may be, learn a little bit more about how this can be applied towards their technology or their software and see what the capabilities are. So we can present.
Figure out how we're gonna inspect it.
So the inspection, implementation, and the other thing was, originally we had talked about all rentals not just short-term rentals.
Correct.
And Noah brought this up, which I want to piggyback on him, is this isn't a goal to just single out one group. We're taking a life safety stance that we think if you rent here, you believe you should be safe in all regards, and which I think is a great stance. But I think we got to. This only covers one half, right? Or I don't know what the percentages of long term versus short term is, but I mean, there's a lot of questions. You know, how are we going to inspect implementation of starting, potentially using software, what they can do, answering about the septic questions of, you know, I think there's a lot of question marks that we need some answers to before. I don't know how to get all those answers, but
The septic is confirmation of bedrooms, is my understanding of it.
The way I read it is
Yes.
it's occupants.
Yeah, so it needs to be worded differently because it's based on bedroom, so that needs to be ironed out. I agree with what you said, Mr. Tucker.
Terry?
I just wanted to mention that I did, after your meeting last time, I did change everything to all rentals. But then when I went before the trustees, they were like, do any other town do all rentals? And I said, only St. Albans, and the trustees did not want it to be for all rentals. They want it to be for short-term rentals. I think that if you make it for all rentals, I don't think it's gonna go with the public at all. It's really hard to find a long-term rental in the first place, and I think it's gonna bomb if you add all rentals to it. And I also think people like Bruce Dryhouse, you know, he's got the rentals up on High Street, he's got the rentals down on Main Street. He's been doing it for years, he's got really low rent, and there's hardly no places like that in Ludlow. And I don't think we need to do anything to make it harder for those people to stay in business.
If we're
That's my
focused on
opinion
just
anyway.
safety,
If
they
you-
should be doing that anyway.
If
I
you're
just
focused
moved.
just on safety, you're not gonna have lofts with 14 beds in them. I mean, that's what Chris Callahan said. He goes, you have to outlaw those lofts. There's no way. That's about fire safety.
And I just want to do a clarification real quick. The trustees recommended two separate documents, if memory serves, a long-term
Yeah.
document and a short-term document, because
Yeah.
they're different.
and maybe that's the direction, but I just want to make sure that,
Yeah.
that we cover those bases because last time when I was at the select board, there was a lot of, the public's concern was that we have singled out one group when we really didn't address the other group. And we had people provide testimony that says, well, my long-term rental, and I don't know how you make it fair and maybe encourage people to do long-term rentals, but like, just to make sure that we at least talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to septic and fire safety, purely fire safety, that is the same exact code. The fire safety, whether it's a long-term rental, short-term rental, the fire code is the exact same thing. There's tax requirements for short-term rental, and there's a Department of Health thing you need to sign. But other than that, it's the same exact code. I just moved into my third apartment in the village of Ludlow, and the light switch to the basement controls the hardwire for all the smoke alarms. That, and I've said it before, the other two had code issues. If we are focused on safety, our residents should 100% be part of this thing. And if I don't think we don't have to charge if you're doing long-term rentals,
Maybe
but we
that's the
should make
incentive.
sure you are safe.
Maybe that's the incentive portion.
Eric?
Thanks. Yeah, a couple of things, if you don't mind. I agree with what Noah just said there. You know, I think if we were able to go into every single rental unit in this town, I think by a large margin, the long-term rentals would be found to have more violations and generally more unsafe than short-term rentals. Short-term rentals have to be, you know, they work off their ratings, you know, certain things they have to meet there, so those are the same pieces that long-term rentals don't have, you know. Noah just said he moved into 3 apartments, they've all had a lot of issues. Just going through the document real quickly, if I could, just some things to think about, you know, as it's making its way through. Under section 2, this is the big, you know, that sort of stood out. right to quiet enjoyment of homes and properties. I think you're misapplying that term here. That term, right to quiet enjoyment, really has nothing to do with actual quiet or enjoyment. It's a legal term in the rental sense between a landlord, the agreement between a landlord and someone who's renting apartments. And basically it means, that who's renting an apartment has the right to use that full apartment without any interference from the landlord coming in, inspecting, shutting off utilities. Not a big deal, but I think it's not being applied in the right sense here, because quiet enjoyment doesn't have anything to do with quiet or enjoyment. And on top of that, I don't think the village of Ludlow has a noise ordinance to enforce there anyway.
It does, yeah.
What goes now?
Yep.
Perfect.
We have that on warrant.
Moving down section 4, the rental registration. I think you should think about not having this as a yearly permit. That seems to add a lot of work that may be unnecessary. Maybe think about a 3-year permit or a 5-year permit, as you work through. Section 4, letter C, some of this has been covered, but I just want to touch it. The sewer allocation, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not sure every property has a sewer allocation. So I don't know how they would provide that, if that's a mandatory piece of the, the requirement to get the permit. Section C, number 4, we talked about this a little bit, the 15-minute drive. I question why, any house in this town or any town is just as susceptible to burning down, whether it's rental or not. My own home burned to the ground a few years ago. I was 3 hours away. So I'm not sure why a short term, because that's what it says, would need to be, or anybody would need to be within 15 minutes of their property to turn it over. Because that could be any property, any business, any property in this town, could burn down, and there's no requirement for those people to be here within 15 minutes to turn it over. That just seems like a real stretch, So I'd like you to think about that. Section 7 in the same piece there, there's some language, entering property damage insurance that coverage that occurs during or as a result of the use of the dwelling as a short-term rental. Not quite sure what that means, the damage that occurs. Is that damage to someone else's property? I own a lot of rental property. I have commercial policies for all those. None of those policies actually cover any of my tenants' belongings or any actual damage that they do, on them.
That's why they have renter's insurance.
Yeah, if it's damaged, then exactly, they have to take out their policy to cover their own belongings. If they damage my place, then, I'm going after them for it. If they burn the place down, it's still my policy that covers it. It really has nothing to do with them, so. Next one down, proof satisfactory to the town. That statement is very ambiguous. Why not spell out exactly what you need? Satisfactory to the town really leaves that open, to interpretation, to the individual that may be applying for the permit. There may be extra conditions based on who that person is. So I would like that to really be spelled out. This is what you need. Simple as that. Number 9, the same thing, wastewater allocation. Not much sure that every property has that, so could you do that? Section D, paragraph 2. Noah touched on this, I think. Requiring a yearly inspection seems unnecessary. The state comes in and inspects it, they give you their forms, and those are good for, however long until you do a change of use. So requiring a yearly inspection seems to be too much. Do you need to get in these units every year if they've already passed everything that's been certified by the state, or been certified once? I'd just like you to think about that. Section D, sorry, section H. I'm concerned about the last section there. Short-term rentals shall be open to spot inspections by authorized fire personnel. That appears to be a Fourth Amendment violation to me. I'd like some thinking on that one. That someone could just show up and inspect. I don't think that's allowed in any sense. So I'd like further clarification in really spelling that piece out there. And section 7, I'm going too fast. Section 7 under penalties. Fine for advertising a short-term rental, $200 a day, $400 a day. This seems like an overstepping of authority. There's no violation. I haven't rented a place, I just advertised a place, and I'm subject, or anyone's subject to a fine because I've advertised something with no proof that I've actually rented it, whether or not I'm not in compliance with the state. That seems like a real overstepping, especially in the state of Vermont. Those are just my comments I'd like, think about it.
Thank you, Mr. Alden. We brought up the short-term rental open to spot inspections at our last meeting. It's kind of
And maybe it's something that the software does a lot. So you change your occupancy from 8 to 10 on a Friday. Sunday night, you change it back to 8. Well, that software is pulling data weekly at different times to grab that kind of stuff. You add a bedroom, you do things like that change the core items of your inspection or your permit. That gets flagged for us. Mm-hmm. So maybe it's something that, if a violation, if a complaint, if something happens, you go in. I know Ben has got it where they go up for a false alarm and, there's a bedroom that's not safe here. Gives the fire marshal a call. And they have the authority to do that. And Ben, correct me if I'm wrong, fire marshal has the ability to come into a public building at any time?
I'm trying to find the statute, but typically I would say, and I'll get back to you with more information on this, we would typically, as a fire marshal, say we would give you 72 business hours because that would be giving the tenant their time to be notified of the inspection. But as a public building, it falls under the jurisdiction of those codes.
And one thing I wanted to touch base on is long-term versus short-term. Long-term has its code issues. I think the issues are kind of different, where short-term, they don't know how many bedrooms are in there. They don't know if a closet has a set of bunk beds. They don't know if they've stacked 6 people in a 2-bedroom. Long-term, we don't know if they're up to code and we don't know if they're safe, but I don't think they're stuffing a bunch of people in there because generally speaking, the landlord doesn't like that. So I understand the safety of it and I understand the similarities. Just seems like 2 separate problems or kind of distinct issues.
I think it all comes back to safety because we don't care. I don't think we're concerned that this property sleeps 16 people. It's the fact that we're concerned that it doesn't sleep 16 people safely.
Correct.
And whether it's 2 people or 16 people, goes back to the safety piece.
But one of them is trying to make it unsafe, and I guess the other one hasn't been updated because there's no enforcement currently.
I bet a lot of people who have it are not aware that they're doing things unsafely. And I would say the same thing for
That's
long
also
term.
an avenue, right? That's an education portion.
I would imagine, just based on Mr. Silvestri coming in here a couple times, there's concern about condominiums in particular. I'm not saying one way or another. I think we do need long-term regulations as well. I just wanted to bring that point up. You made some good points, Mr. Alden. I think we have our work cut out for us on this for a while longer, myself.
Wait, can I just
Jerry?
finish with something? I guess I'm passionate about this because of those, those 13 people that basically escaped with their lives, and I just don't want to go into another winter like that. I mean, there was a 2-year-old in there. I have a 2-year-old granddaughter. There was a dog. I mean, I just don't want to go into another winter with no short-term rental regulations. And this has been vetted by our lawyer. It's been vetted by Rose. It's been before the select board twice, maybe 3 times, before the trustees. I think we can act on this one piece. We can make changes at the public hearing as long as they're not major changes. Some of Mr. Alden's concern, the fine for advertising a property without being registered is on the next page, or complying with local listing requirements. That's just to get people that didn't register, that have short-term rentals and are advertising them but didn't bother to register with the town. That's just the way to make sure that they do. That's all I want to say. I just feel like a lot of work went into it, and let's not just kick it down the road. I think we should, long-term rentals, if you're passionate about that, come up with an ordinance for that, and that can be next. But I urge you to not go into this winter without these fire safety things in place.
And to piggyback on Mr. Alden's point on section D2, yearly inspections is in regards, it's vague. Is it in regards to the equipment such as sprinkler, like Mr. Whalen alluded to, or is it open for yearly inspections by our fire safety professionals
And
here?
it's for over 8.
Yep.
I will comment on that real quick, that if, let's say hypothetically, there's 1,000 rentals of 9 or more, it's not feasible to have those inspected every year.
I don't know the exact amount of
I'm just-
over 8 occupants. I think it's a few.
Yeah.
So the way it's written, if you read it, it sounds like that's a requirement, but the term "like" in the sense of the law isn't a requirement.
Safety measures like a manual activated fire alarm, comma, yearly inspections, and specific door
Right.
requirements.
So it's very
It's,
Or-
yeah.
it's very vague, as you said, right? But the term "like" is what is referencing that this is an example.
Maybe you have a troublesome one and you want to look at it every year. So it gives you the option to do that.
Well, that falls under whatever the term "additional fire safety measures" is, which I assume is a pretty broad term that's used to capture almost anything.
Eric?
I just had one more quick clarification, and section H, self-certification is allowed for the first year. There's an inspection by the fire marshal or local fire certified personnel shall occur within 1 to 5 year of operation, short-term rental. That's conflicting. So I can self-certify in the first year, but then I have 1 to 5 years to get a fire marshal in there? What happens in year 2 if I don't have them in there? I can only self-certify for 1 year, so then I have up to 5 years to have someone come in. I'm not quite reading that right.
Yeah, you are reading it right. My notes say self-certification is allowed for 2 years, and to change the language from 1 to 2 year period because it's not congruent. That was going to be a suggestion that I had, but you can't. 1 year is self-certifying, and we have to get the MOU from the state, and we have to get the software up and running. It goes quick. We know how quick a year goes when we meet here once a month. So that was going to be a suggestion that I further
So what's the
produced.
suggestion, 2 to 5 year period of operation?
No, just reword it. What page? I got rid of it.
It's section 4.
Section H, self-certification is allowed for 2 years. And then just change the 1 to 5 year period of operation. Shall occur within a 2 year period. And I don't know if that's even feasible. That's just something that I was gonna propose.
Ben, inspection every 3 years, you don't see a problem with that?
Unless something triggers, like Noah said.
I do not. I mean, so to be abundantly clear, so like right now, if a fire marshal goes and inspects a unit until there is a construction or a change of use, which would include changing bed spaces, would be my take on this. There is no reinspection. Complaints would bring them in, and so on.
I think that's,
I think 3 years would make more sense.
I just think, correct me if I'm wrong, but you're going to inspect them the one time, and then you're not gonna see them again until a construction permit or a bed space change or something.
Correct, and
Complaints,
as we think about on a local dynamic, our MOU would just be for rentals. So I try to go to construction inspections when they occur, but that will not be triggering anything for us because we will not have any MOU for construction at this point.
Complaints, space alterations, things that are handled at the zoning administrator or the town level.
Or our software, if it says, hey, there's been a change in from what your allocation is for, that would then, in my mind, trigger a, hey, we're coming to say
Yeah.
hi.
Separate of the 3-year inspection, correct?
You're talking about my proposed 2-year.
Right, so you're saying, just so I make sense, you said 3 years, you're saying that instead of, that would trigger every 3 years, right? Is that what you're trying to?
My understanding of it is the fire marshal or the MOU, our people would go in and inspect it one time and then not inspect it unless there's a complaint or a change or something like that. Is that not the case?
That didn't work. I guess I don't. Was it in that same section that talked about any type of reinspection?
I guess I don't.
That's why it's open to spot inspection.
Yeah, I don't see a reinspection. The spot inspection, I think, covers complaints or bed space adjustments or something.
Okay, so it's one time you're gonna get inspected.
Yeah,
Okay, I'm just trying to make sure what you were trying to, so I understood
yeah.
what you were trying to angle.
We were also
Okay.
just talking about the yearly inspections under there.
Yeah.
Different,
So it's,
yeah.
I'm just trying to follow
Mhm.
along that I'm not lost in the sauce.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I think it is important, and I don't want to keep kicking the can. We've been working on this Mr. Schmidt and Mr. Alden served on the registry committee 2 years ago. I think it was 2 years ago, 2022 or 2023.
Probably 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, long time ago. So we've seen other towns implement it. We know it can be done. There are a couple issues that I just think we're close. I think we're close.
You can make changes in public hearing too.
We're ready for the public hearing.
Yeah.
And subsequent meetings after that, until it's adopted and you like it the way it is, you know? Just moves it further along.
What concerns me is we've been talking about it for a long time, and it needs that, we want to make sure we do it right. And this still has not been discussed at the planning commission. I think it's, and I don't, we're like, we have a lot of questions and we're going back and forth here. Like, I don't think it's quite there. And I think it's important to, and maybe it's time to bring in whoever's going to be administering this thing, because it's going to be big.
Well, I think for myself, aside from all the questions that have been brought up tonight, and there's some, there are concerns. I mean, Mr. Alden brought up, is it a Fourth Amendment violation? That immediately is a legal concern to me.
Chris Callahan did not think so. He looked at-
I know, but then I'd want to be 1,000% sure. So
Comes down to the definition of what a spot
yeah,
inspection is.
exactly. And I think, aside from that, what concern is a concern for me that we've talked about is, how does it get implemented? You know, even every step we take forward, and I've told Terry, there's been a ton of work on this, which is fantastic. But we don't want to screw this up if we're gonna do it. And right now, if it were to go to a public and we continue, how is it implemented and how is it enforced? I don't know. We haven't gone down that road. We've talked about it a little bit, but it's adding another person. You know, part of my job is watching the finances. We don't have the finances in hand right now to hire someone. We didn't budget for it. Could it be done with the staffing we have in-house right now? No, not effectively. We couldn't. The planning department's overstretched. Our fire department is, we're working on other things there with the fire and the ambulance. So that is something that I need to look at, but it's also difficult to look at exactly what is being enforced. If, what we have here is now, there's a lot of questions and changes that have been brought up, possibility from the board. We don't know exactly until it's like, yep, this is what it is, and this is what's going to be enforced. I can't give you that answer.
We need to know from the software company.
What is going to require, and I come back to too, that it's so important with this from my office that we have someone here. They're not talking to someone on a phone, that they can come in, and if there's an issue and there's a question, they just don't understand the ordinance, that they can come in and make an appointment or come in and see someone who is essentially the face of the Ludlow rental registry. That is, non-negotiable.
It's my understanding that this is going to be a self-funded ordinance.
Essentially, but it's got to start somewhere.
Correct.
So
But it starts.
That's ideal.
I think it
But
starts
when
by
it- when
being
somebody-
passed,
Yeah, but
and
when
then
somebody comes in,
we have to start
obviously,
collecting
we
the
have to-
permits.
We're essentially fronting that money.
Yeah,
But
I think it wouldn't be a very long time.
no, but
And just for a time sense, software companies, it does range, but you're probably a 2 to 5 month time frame to get to effective registration is required as of this point. So if this was passed today, you have that time frame to get everything set up and going, and I believe it's our wastewater is an Excel sheet, so getting that in there to match up and all of those pieces that's a big thing that you probably want that person to be there for.
It also takes the system, the software, a few months to digest all the information,
Mhm.
collate it, and make it make
Sure
sense. Granicus, the old company that we partnered with for, I believe, a year, did that in
Mhm.
essence. So we're not starting from a complete stop, at least in terms of
And,
gathering the information.
The information is a piece of it, but it's also training and
Sure.
they will take that listing on Airbnb, VRBO, and then find other points to map that. And that's real estate transactions, that's Google Street View, and they find sources to verify that, yes, this is 123 Main Street. It has been verified by a person, or the algorithm does it, AI, and then a person verifies it, boom, we're good. So that definitely takes a big chunk of time as well.
May I ask maybe the planning commission or the chair or Mr. McNamara to try to get somebody from Granicus here for our next meeting so we can, move a little further along on this?
Can I say something about that company?
Yes.
Noah came and presented to our board, a whole bunch of the companies and gave us all the information about it, and the GovOS, that one, 80% the first year, I mean, that's your position. That's gonna pay for your position if we have over 1,000 for sure.
Yeah, and we had members of Granicus speak a few years ago. It's important so we have this public discourse and we can inform the public, but we should understand this in terms of their capabilities and their software. And
And there are
what the
three
structure is. Big
front
ones.
runners that I see. It's Deckard, GovOS, Granicus. They all do, at its core, the same thing. There's little tweaks here and there. But Granicus does have the person that will help you through the ordinance process, regardless of if you go with them or not.
So we also, in that same vein, obviously, having someone from one of those companies, and I know Noah's kind of well versed in it, so we can maybe think about having some, but we probably are going to have to put that out for bid as well.
And they did, I
Sure.
mentioned that because I was like, I need rough pricing and we, but there was something when we signed the agreement with Granicus before, they were part of some bid structure that allowed us to like negotiate pricing. Is that?
That is correct.
Yeah.
That was right before your time.
I'd have to read, I was in on the tail end
Yeah.
of the Granicus, so, yes, but.
Granicus is kind of middle road.
Yeah.
GovOS was extremely expensive. And I did ask, like, I think it was Chester and Woodstock maybe went back and forth with a company, and it seemed like they didn't have the inventory that to really match the high cost of the software. We definitely have the inventory, and we'll be using their tools much more than, I think it's like 70 something listings in Woodstock where, that could be someone scrolling through that and making
Granicus
sure.
software, I looked at it, was easy to use.
Mhm.
It was pretty user friendly.
Yep.
But again, it's just.
Bruce?
I just want to make a comment that, this all began because there was no housing, and we can try to think that we're doing it for safety, but it all started. There's been short-term, long-term rentals in here for a long time, and now we're making it into a safety thing, which is great. But if you don't make it for long-term, every one of you is going to have to live with that if something happens. And you need to include every rental that's in this community. Many of you have family members that rent, but I think you're really passing the buck if it's just to go after the short term. And I think it's something you got to really do some soul searching, on, because, this all became a big deal when there was a, rental property that, had a very unfortunate fire. It could be a long-term rental and we'd be having the same discussion. So I think you got to really think that through, and make sure you're all comfortable with that. If you're going to leave some out because we don't want to look into that anymore. So just wanted to mention that.
Thank you, Bruce.
Yeah,
I
thank
agree
you,
with
Bruce.
100%.
I don't think there's anybody on this board that doesn't want that. It's how to go about that, I think, that we're conflicted on.
That's true, but I would, say that the Planning Commission does not want that. Doesn't seem to be support, for going that direction. So there seems to be a little bit of disconnect here, because there's been a lot of work that's been putting into this, and you can sense some frustration of what has been talked about here. So, I think you got to get onto this a little bit more and think through this, so everybody gets on the same page.
Now, it is my understanding, which is, I guess, why I'm considering keeping them separate, is Granicus does not do long-term rentals, from my understanding of it.
No, they will. They're gonna, especially in Ludlow, like I've found my apartments on Facebook or word of mouth or things like that. If they are advertised on a listing site, then they are scraped, but they're not, they're not going through Facebook to find those places. No. But when you collect a dump permit and I fill out, hey, I'm a renter at this location, here's my landlord. There's plenty of times where that data is collected.
And we should also not forget that complaint line is an AI tool that the software company uses, and that could be applied to long-term rentals.
Mm-hmm.
Super easy. Tenant's unhappy, feels unsafe, put it through, and we'll send somebody out to look at it. And I think those are the type of tools that we can discuss, hopefully, with a liaison from a company. But yes, point well taken.
Is there not a way that we could have, like in this ordinance, if you are rental registry and then just have, section E or G or whatever that says if you're renting short term, you need X, Y, and Z?
Checklist style.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like those items that are not included. Because when it comes to safety stuff, it's all the same. And then, hey, short-term rental, you need your tax compliance, you need whatever that might be. At its core, it's the same.
Excuse
Document.
me, do you mean for long-term?
Yes.
Yeah.
In life
yeah.
safety, yeah.
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 Okay, I'm gonna change that.
It's getting a little confusing here in the weeds,
No,
isn't it, Lish?
We already talked about short-term, now you're saying short-term again, and I'm going like,
I feel it, I appreciate it, Bruce. It is, at least from my perspective, is that the way we implement this when it comes to it, right? Like, we get one opportunity to do this. And I know there's pressures to do it sooner we've got the upcoming season, but like, doing it right and doing it once is very important.
Yeah.
And I don't want it to be discounted as the person who's the long-term renter, who's a voter here, right? Who they use the services of this town year round. Those are the people who we serve 365, not just the person who comes up here for a long weekend to go skiing. And I think that it might be as simple as like including like
A section.
right? And I'm not trying to add more work to a document that I know that more hours than we probably can count have gone into, but like.
We do have to get it right, Mr. Tucker. I agree with that. So some extra work may be required. I think we need to get more ducks in a row, like the town manager alluded to.
Because the first question out of a voter's mouth when we have a hearing is, how's this gonna get implemented? How's it gonna get funded? Am I being taxed more to pay for this? What am I gaining is, those are all big questions.
And valid points. We have a general direction, I imagine.
we just.
You're not
Spend
looking
some
for a
more time on
motion?
No, I think there just needs to be some direction given as to where we are going.
I think we need more technical guidance from the software company. I think we need more understanding of the long-term implications in the document, maybe a section. And there are just a few more points that I guess we can hammer out at a public meeting after those.
Ben?
I will, hopefully this week, reach out to some other chiefs that are currently going through these learning curves and figure out what has worked for as far as reinspection. I do believe Woodstock initially did either every year or every 3 years, and I believe they changed that to either every 5 or they got rid of it altogether. So
They only have 70.
and they only have heads. So, but I will follow up on those things. And to Bruce's point, even with the long terms, like as I think about reinspection, it's not to go in and count beds. It's to go in and make sure that smoke detectors actually work and are in place, and that there's carbon monoxide detection. It's not to, the beds necessitate all of those different requirements. My hope would be that the software will cover us knowing where those places are. It's making sure those other things that are not good for more than 10 years are still operational.
Yep. And, I like the long-term not charging a permit fee thing like that. Those are all good ideas. I just think it needs more time. I do,
So I guess what I would ask, I know what the board is looking for myself, just regarding, what an enforcement structure with, Ben and I can work on that, implementation. Software, possibly a company can speak, I'll talk with Noah about, what we have, but I guess regarding the document, if there's direction to me or direction to the planning commission in Terry, just need that clarified a little bit.
Terry?
Yeah, I want to speak about the planning commission. We have a lot to do. We have to do town zoning, a complete redo of town zoning. We have to do a complete redo of the town plan, all before 2027. This started the planning commission, but then I went to all the experts to get, this has been well thought out for short-term rentals. If we could stick with the short-term rentals and get that implemented, somebody that has a passion for long-term rentals like Noah can write that ordinance, and that can be a whole separate thing. But I think this is ready to go. It's been vetted by everybody for short-term rentals. And I would really appreciate having companies come in, but I think they're not gonna tell us what our ordinance is. Our ordinance has been put together specifically for our town, with everybody's input in it. It doesn't have to be kicked down the road, the ordinance part of it. The company and what they expect, that's gonna come in play, and I really think you should have the companies come and give their spiels to see which one you wanna go with. But I think the short-term rental ordinance is ready to go. That's just how I wanna end it up.
Thank you, Ms. Carter. And it's a point well taken. I'm worried about the logistics and the implementation of it. You know, the budget's one thing, finding the right person's another thing, sourcing the software and the company is another thing. I think the ordinance is well thought out. I think it's been vetted by the people that you've spoke about. The people that need to vet it are the townspeople and the voters in this town. And there's some questions that they're gonna have, and I don't.
It's at a public hearing, that's why you have them. It's not the end of it.
Exactly.
You make changes after the public hearing. Maybe you have another one if you made major changes, but it's a place to get it started. The next logical place is a public hearing for the ordinance to go to. And then I think it took like 4 meetings or something with the trustees to get the village zoning passed. Because of the first public hearing, they wanted changes made, we went to their meetings, we had another public hearing because the changes were major. The public hearing is not the end of it, it's just the next step in the process of getting it exactly the way we want it.
Bruce?
I just get a little concerned that, you know, the chair of the planning commission would say that, oh, well, you don't like this, you don't want to do this part, have someone else do it. I think what you're seeing from that is a frustration of direction from the select board to what the planning commission, she just told you how much work they have. I think you got to spend some time of like, what is important and what support do you need? Is there someone that can help them, you know, that we need to, you know, help them do some of the things that for the town plan? And, you know, I think you're hearing some of this, you know, that like, where do they go? They put a lot of time and effort into things. And I think you owe it to yourselves to, you've spent over an hour on this, going on, you know, 90 minutes. I think you owe it to having a special meeting where, in this month, where you go through and you put in the type of verbiage that you want. As a select board, that's the agenda item, to get yourself to a point where everybody can agree, because there's obviously some desire to get this to, you know, to a public hearing, but at the same time, you don't want to rush it. You know, so I think you got to look at how do you balance this, you know, because you've got a committee that's telling you that they are overworked and need some support, and that's what the job of the select board is, to give direction.
And that's not what I'm saying though. We don't feel overworked. We just have a job
So-
to do.
But I just think you have to do it the right way, you know, when it comes to these things, and this feels very rushed.
Thank you, Mr.
And
Chair.
holding other things out is not the right way.
I think we are getting long in the tooth on this discussion, so I would move to table the discussion. If we set up a special June meeting to hammer this out, the more finite details, I am more than happy to attend that meeting, more than happy to do whatever needs to be done to give you guys the support going into it, to make sure that we don't have to come here once a month and try to hammer out these details before a public meeting. So we're all on the same page when the public meeting does get scheduled and does go forth. I think it's a little too gray here to put it to a public meeting, just because we all have different questions. and then the public's gonna have it. We're not tight together as a unit, as a town, presenting this document. So I would be happy to schedule an additional meeting if that is what this board wants to do, and if that's what the chair of the planning commission wants to do. But if not, I'd move to table this conversation.
I would have another meeting if that's what you wanna do. In a couple weeks, do it 2 meetings this June, just to move this along, or help move it along.
I think that'd give us the opportunity to maybe get some preliminary, what do you think, Brennan? Some at least preliminary ideas for some of the questions. Take some of the time we can work on the language so that there's a new variation that's taken in some of the comments from today. I mean, I don't know what dates look like.
And how long would it take to get grants here? Would they come in 2
They
weeks?
have their
They've
own
been-
ordinance
Yeah,
section.
and everyone's been pinging me to see where they are on updates. So I think all 3 of them are eager to continue the conversation.
Oh, good.
So whatever.
Was the select
They
board meet
want-
every third
want-
Wednesday as the alternate?
Yeah.
Be the
Third Monday.
Third Monday, thank you.
16th. Yeah, it would technically be the 16th.
Yeah.
Because there's actually 5 Mondays in this month. So the 16th to the 23rd.
The 16th gives us a little over 2 weeks. I think that's
2 weeks.
good.
Yeah.
Oh, 2 weeks exactly. That's the second already. I don't know if that's amicable with the board. I think that's
I'm fine with it.
okay.
We'll move to have meeting for short-term rental on the 16th. Moving on, review proposed vendor food truck
Do we
ordinance.
need a second on that?
No,
We don't know.
We
need a
should-
motion.
no,
The
we'll
time
just-
is 6 p.m.
Yeah, 6 p.m. is scheduled.
Okay.
So you
Thank you.
have,
This is my tip.
Oh, here we go. Get back in here. Sorry.
So, been kind of working on the vendor food truck ordinance as it's been requested by a number of citizens of town. You have the copy in front of you, and I will again defer to the starter.
I didn't think I would be coming before the select board with the vendor ordinance, but we talked about it at our last planning commission meeting, and gonna go to the trustees meeting tomorrow and realize some of these food trucks might be in the town, so maybe this may be an ordinance that we need for the town as well. I did a lot of research. I don't know if my chart is in here, the different
It's on the
towns.
back, I think I put the chart on the back.
Oh, yeah, on the back of one of them. So I looked at the planning commission, as I will state again, the planning commission does not write ordinances. I have just volunteered because of work we've done at the planning commission to come up with the original ordinance and then, went from there. But the planning commission does not write ordinances. The select board and the trustees do. So I took a look at the desires that we had, the ideas that we had in the planning commission, what we wanted to do about food trucks in the town. For one thing, the duration of how long they're able to park is like 150 days. And basically at the trustees meeting, everybody was like, that's a restaurant. If you're gonna be open for 150 days, you're not a food truck that comes and goes. And the fee also was an issue. It's just $25 a day, and it maxes out at $250 for 150 days. So the planning commission had various ideas, and so I went and looked at all these other ordinances online, and the one that came the closest to what we wanted and that we came up in our planning commission was the Shelburnes. So I took Shelburnes and then plugged in a bunch of other things that we wanted in our meeting that we had come up with, and added what sections of our village bylaws. Our village bylaws say that we want to keep the village center vibrant and economically successful, and the food trucks basically are hampering that because they're putting our brick and mortars out of business, especially if they can be there for 150 days. So anyway, this is the ordinance, and I don't know if you had a chance to look it over, if you have any questions about it, but I don't know if the town would also like to adopt this ordinance. And tomorrow I'm going to talk to the village trustees about bringing this to a public hearing if they like it and they want to go with it.
Thank you, Ms. Carter. Town administrator, the town of Ludlow assistant administrator. Is that the zoning administrator
Tori
office?
for the village and Diane for the town administrator, yeah, it's Tori or Diane in there. Right now, they are signing the permits for food trucks. But another thing that's happened is, because it's just signed in there and it doesn't go to the planning commission or the DRB, is do they even have the density to have a food truck in their parking lot? Do they have the parking? Fire safety's not looked at, nothing is looked at. Also, the one at Sunoco, they should have gotten a change of use permit because they're not permitted to have a food truck. They're permitted as a gas station with a little mini mart in it. So, you know, Tori and Diane, they don't even know, they're not familiar with the permitting process. So that, and the food truck did nothing wrong. They just had to fill out the permit and it got okay because we didn't have any sort of guidelines. And if you look at these other towns like Rutland and Springfield and Chester, there are a lot of state permits that they're supposed to get before they even open up. And these towns actually check on them that they have them. And so I have in this ordinance that we would check on that they have the mobile food facility permit, the public health permit, the employee health permit, and in Rutland, they have to have a city business license. In Shelburne, they have to go through the DRB and get a conditional use permit. In Springfield, they have to also they have to get a town license, but it only costs $10. But the town, and it has no limit for duration either, but the town does make sure that they have all these other permits from the state. And in Chester, they have to get a DRB approval. So my suggestion would be, if you like this ordinance, that maybe it should go through the planning office and not through the administrator. Now it says it goes to the town administrator, but they have no idea about density or, what
And
the
there's
permit
no, so for example, the two that we have right now are permits that I signed, that there is no guidelines for denial or approval obviously there is, but with denial, it's basically does it not, essentially, are you not parked on the sidewalk? And that's really about it. And is it sponsored by a property? So.
Sponsored by a property?
owner. So the property owner has to apply, is basically the applicant.
Yep.
So to Terry's point, there's no guidelines regarding checking these boxes.
It's also from 2008.
Yeah.
The current permit was written in 2008. A lot of things have happened since 2008.
I did a little bit of research on this document just from a standpoint of I've had food trucks at my business. What about water usage? Wastewater permits, where they can dump the gray water, how they're getting access to potable water, who's responsible for that?
Those are all state permits that they get, and it says that they have to bring them, they can't dump the water, it has to be brought in and brought out.
Now, where in this document would I see that wastewater permit? What's it called?
Well, it's not in this document, it's in the current document, because all somebody did was cut and paste the state regulations and put them into that permit in the town office. Oh yeah, it does have it.
Why am I not finding that page?
You must dump or otherwise dispose of gray water or any wastewater on site. They may not. You have to bring it in and they have to take it out. I'm pretty sure they're just dumping it in Sunoco.
I don't see that it says that they need to have any permit.
Which section are you on?
Section 4,
4B,
number 4.
food truck operators may not dump or otherwise dispose of gray water or any wastewater on site. Food truck operators may not dispose of gray water in town or privately owned catch basins or sewer basins. I don't see where the permit fits in there. I just see that you can't do that.
Well, the permits they fill out with the state. All those are about.
Or do we require proof of that permitting process?
Yeah, that's what this ordinance requires, proof of those permits.
Is this a
Where?
typo, or no food trucks shall be in commercially zoned areas?
I have that highlighted here. Section 4, line 8. Food truck regulations.
Yeah, I didn't.
It looks like it should say.
Food truck shall only be.
Shall be, yeah,
Yeah.
If the no is.
that's a typo.
And the permit limitations, section 8 there.
Yeah.
1 to 3 permit, 48 hours or less period of time is 100. Up to 30 days per calendar year, the fee is $100 a day. So you're parking it for a month. It's $3,000, and there's nothing more. You do 30 days and you're out of town for 11 months. I'm reading that correctly?
This is about food trucks coming and going, so up to 30 days of your 3-day permit. So you get a 3-day permit for $100, and you can use it up to 30 days of the year, so you can use it 10 times. A total of 30 days of the year, but you can't go over 30 days of the year. Because right now we have it in 150 days of the year.
Mhm.
We debated this in the plan commission over and over again. Another thing that we put in here, I think it's they have to be 400 feet from
Yep.
a restaurant, and the one that I took this from said 200 feet. And I think that's more realistic, but we did have 2 people with food trucks in the planning commission that day, and they were adamant that it should be more than that.
So yeah,
Yeah, they
that's,
had really good input.
yeah, so like where it says at least 200 feet, but then we put 400 feet. That's a typo. So that's section,
It's the last, or second to last page.
section 4, section, under which section A, subsection 2. It says must be located at least 200 feet, and then it's got the
Yeah,
400 feet in
Yeah,
parentheses,
I
yeah.
didn't change the number
No.
because I didn't think you were gonna want to keep it there. Or that the trustees.
400
wanted to
feet's
keep it
nothing.
200 feet, because Noah was saying that he was.
I can't have it at Main Mountain,
That's like nobody, that's nowhere in the village. if you go
according to
over.
this. I
Yeah,
wouldn't be able
I
to.
think like this, I've gone back and forth with this, and I think if that was a Thai food truck, would we be having the conversation? So I want to be careful about going after just one, trying to solve one problem. And I can think of a dozen examples. The Legion barbecue. Well, you can't block sidewalks in this. You need the zoning. They can't do it. Justin can't have a special event at his place. Our farmers market, when I think the one of Nick's programs or something, they had a food truck down at the school. That's not zoned for that. So I can see all these times where we're going to want to carve out a special circumstance, which then goes to, can anyone actually bring a food truck in here for the purposes of what typically food trucks do, is come in, park for a few days and or more extended period of time. And I think with tying it to zoning, it makes it really difficult, if not impossible, to do. So I think we want to be really thoughtful in what the goal is here.
So, let me just piggyback off what you said, right? So, under application review, so subsection C of number 2, of which it's labeled as number 3, character of the area, right? Unless some of these places use a development review board as their form of enforcement. And so you have someone come in, let's talk this hypothetical, that you say, and you have one business that's a brick and mortar that serves X, Y, and Z. Food truck wants to come in, serve same X, Y, and Z, that the development review board would then hear evidence from one party that says, this would impact my business, right? And then they would say, okay, this is not good for the character of the area, right? And that could be applied, it's a very liberal, character of the area is a very liberal term. And I think in the sense of using the zoning, which is hard rules, rigid rules, is the real question. You can't be parked in a place for 150 days when it takes significantly less investment when compared to the brick and mortar place, right? So is the question, I think one of your questions was about the number of days, right, Justin? So you said, oh, you can use it for 30 days and then you're gone for 11 months and you can use those 30 days however you want. Like, maybe that's the direction, I don't know. But like, right? Isn't that kind of,
Yeah,
it is because, right, if you want to park a food truck here permanently, then that's zoning.
yeah.
That's
Right.
right, because it's fixed.
Like, that's a fixed thing, but like, is a one-day special event, why would, we choose to pursue the DRB, I'll tell you right now, your special event doesn't want to wait a month and a half if you miss the deadline for the
Yeah.
DRB, right? Like,
I think,
been 45 days for
Yeah.
a decision. I mean,
the goal.
no, but like, these are legit questions.
Yeah.
Ordinance doesn't go through the DRB though, it's just goes to the administrative office.
Correct, but I'm saying that some of these other communities have used the DRB.
Yeah.
That like, if that was like, you're using language.
And I think like that, the food truck at Sunoco, that's very different than Justin bringing in a food truck for a one-day special event.
Correct.
And that would need some additional stuff.
I think
Yeah.
there needs to be a very big delineation of, as you said, kind of like, what's this, like 1 to 3 day? I don't know how they necessarily break, they kind of broke that up in the number of days, right? Like, is that the premise, right? We're welcome all food trucks for 1 to 3 days, but if you want to spend more time, here's the full boat, we'll call it.
Yeah, I mean, section A2, again with the 200 feet, the typo, except when operating in connection with a festival or special event, you have to apply for a special event permit through the town, which would then be this special event 1 day or 3 day permit would be piggybacked into that, baked into that special event permit. Is that what we're thinking?
Gene?
I just want to say there is another food truck or van or whatever.
There is.
Down across Village Pizza. But I just want to briefly touch on something that you said about the frustration. The Planning Commission is, they're knocking themselves out on these special projects. And I just want you to know, if you don't, Terry does these herself. There is not a clerk or someone that she can rely on to type these things even for her. She does this herself, apart from the meeting.
Mm-hmm.
So going forward, think about, a town planner and how that fits in. And when you want this kind, and you're gonna want more of this kind of thing, you've gotta have somebody that do it.
Nothing would make me happier, Ms. Strong, than to have a city planner.
Well,
I think that that's a
But
huge
I'm
thing.
just saying, when you're debating this, keep in mind that Terry typed these up on her own time
Mm-hmm.
with input from other people. She doesn't have someone to do this for her or help her.
Mm-hmm. And I think that point should not be lost. Terry goes above and beyond in this role.
Thanks, Jane.
The with that being said, we have constituents that hold us and our town government accountable, and we can't just pass things because somebody worked really hard on it, obviously.
That's not my point.
Or mine.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that, I'm just in open meeting, what I'm saying is we have to, I don't want to misunderstand what you said, but I also don't want the impetus to fall on this board to be pressured into anything.
That's not my point.
Okay.
Is get some help.
I agree, 100% agree. In the moment, it's not lost on me that she mentioned that the select board is supposed to be writing these ordinances. I understand that. But we do have a planning commission, we do have a zoning administrator, and we do have other avenues that we can rely on as a town as well. And if it's becoming an issue where we have to write these ordinances on the fly and not to pertain to a certain business or not, maybe we shouldn't. Maybe we shouldn't even entertain these. Maybe we're wasting our time and spinning our wheels. But if this is important to the constituents of the town, then we can talk about getting a city planner, or we can talk about working in a different respect in terms of having independent meetings on these issues. But I don't want it to seem like we're trying to take advantage of Ms. Carter's time or your time or any of the planning commission's time. Everybody knows how busy everybody is, and it is noted.
Okay, anybody else got anything on this? Not, I would recommend that we pull some more ideas and maybe we can tag this on the meeting.
And just to, I recommended that any of these kind of things that the planning commission
I'm
discussed.
sorry, what did you didn't finish your thing, because,
Somebody cut in.
sorry about that. I didn't get what you were saying.
For everybody to go through this document, bring some changes back, and we'll review this on the third Monday of the month when we do the
And I think
short term.
kind of to the point that Terry made, that part of this, really the onus of the currently really falls to the village.
Right.
The town needs to be conscious of it, but the village is the one that's going to have the kind of the onus is on right now, so just to be clear.
Well, how will that flow with the charter if it changes? Will that flow in?
Yeah, so,
And that was kind of why I suggested, hey, any of this stuff the village is talking, we should see it just so we don't have this
by the language-
mismatch.
By the language of the charter, the ordinances from the village transfer.
At this point, we
Okay.
should be included though, so we know
Correct, and that's
exactly.
what.
And that's what this is. I mean, if there's some big topic, right, that's so different, that maybe we have a very opposing views, then
Yep.
you could make zones, right? Yeah.
Thank you so much for
Yep.
coming in.
Thank you.
Thank you.
9, adopt local emergency management plan.
As per required by the state of Vermont Emergency Management, you have our updated emergency management plan, which essentially is just the document that outlines, I think it's misleading sometimes how it's a plan, because it is not. It is more a document that outlines the contacts, shelter locations, and things that are required by the state of Vermont. Minimal updates from last year, mainly our fire chief, and as I mentioned, Ben is now the ambulance and fire chief for us here. This was put forward when the health officer was Mr. Alden. That will since be changed, but it has not been changed in the state of Vermont per this document, which is the way it needs to be currently. Other than that, everything is up to date with contact numbers, emails, etc. But it's a very bare bones document that is required.
I'll make a motion to approve the document.
We have a second.
Second.
Any other discussion? Being no other discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Guys opposed? Guys have it. Consider action to propose charter for town and village merger vote.
So after our last, we obviously had our public hearing regarding our joint meeting for the merger. And then our last board meeting, you were provided with with the requested changes for the town and village merger. You're provided with the red line document and the clean document that you have. So really, the question before the board right now is if there are not any changes that we see to be made here, the next step would be either consideration for this to go forward, which the next step becomes a series of 3 public hearings, which move sequentially. There are, with an X amount of days between each hearing. So again, there are 3 public hearings that need to be held. That then leads to a public vote on the merger.
Now, I'm unsure about the language. I don't know if we've spoken to Ms. Buxton about it. Section 13 under Select Board, the last sentence. The terms of office for the Select Board may be changed by vote of the electorate at an annual meeting.
That was
Not
put,
terms, but additions or removals of
The number of,
committee
it
members.
was, yeah, that was put there to see, obviously, to go from 5 to 7. without having to.
But is terms the right word? Because terms to me indicates a 1 to 3
1
year.
to 3 year.
Yeah.
Which I think would also be nice to be able to change if the town wanted to.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's just a point that
And that might be a
But
clarification.
that's
Yeah.
also something that.
Sarah might say, yeah, terms means, you can change the number of bodies on the board. I don't know.
Because we can also make changes at the public hearings as well.
Correct.
And how does that work if we go through the third public hearing? Oh, we're going to change this. Does that mean 3 more hearings after that because the document's been revised?
It depends on the level of change.
Your level, yeah.
It depends on whether the change is deemed as a substantial change or on, we might call it like a Scribner's error if there's typos and things like that. Or, there's, it'll be up to the lawyer's discretion basically, what's deemed a substantial change versus a non-substantial change.
Yeah, I think if you're changing something that is going to change the body of the document, that's, yeah.
And what if we go through all that, the state goes and says, hey, we want to tweak some of this. Do we then need to have more? Okay.
No, they're going to tweak it.
And
They're
I
gonna
think
tweak
they
it, we
said
can
they
pass it or
recommend-
not
It is
pass it.
going to, it is,
Well, they
Still.
pass it or don't pass it.
Oh, because we've already
vote,
done
we
it.
send it to them, and then they
Then we
have to
accept
approve
whatever
it.
they've made
Whatever
changes.
the tweak.
Can we not accept it?
I don't know.
Yeah, because once it's been passed at a town level,
Exactly. And so that's where, after it goes to the state, at the legislative level, they're going to look at the document. Like I said at the last meeting too, they're going to make changes. That's like a given, it's just the legislative process. This is gonna go through 2 committees. It's gonna start in the House. It's a 12-member committee. Some of those members are gonna have a question about this comma or that comma. They're gonna wanna move, this paragraph down here instead. Most of them they're not gonna change the substance, but they're gonna disagree with the way that we've worded it, and they're gonna wanna put their mark on it. The committee as a whole. That committee will pass it. They'll send it to the Senate. The Senate committee is also a 5-member committee. Luckily, right now, 2 of our senators are on the Senate committee. The senators from Senator White and Senator Clarkson are both on the GovOps committee in the Senate. So, we have a little bit more, we're in a better position this legislative biennium to put this through, knowing that our own senators are on that committee. After it goes to that, it'll go back to the floor of the Senate, and the Senate will vote on it, before it goes probably back to the House to work out the differences, and then to the governor. There will be differences from what we passed. For the most part, it's not gonna change the substance of it. If it changes the substance too substantially, then they probably wouldn't pass it, and they would send it back to us to reconsider.
you're looking for a motion to put this to
I mean,
public meeting.
it would be to move this to a public meeting. The trustees would have to do the same thing in order for it to happen.
I would like to propose a motion to put the village and town of Ludlow merger charter to a public meeting.
Second.
Any other discussion? Being no other discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Guys opposed? Guys have it. Municipal manager update.
So I'll try to be as concise here as possible. So just a couple of things. We had on the docket a couple of times for a proposed public meeting for the Clark Drive Bridge project and the alternative project, which had been tentatively, sometimes when there's projects after a disaster and FEMA becomes involved, you try to look at the application of alternate projects. Is there something that could be a different route here for a number of different reasons? The project at Clark Drive was discussed about the possibility of extending, because that bridge is going to be tedious to put back in place. Because of the size, because of the conditions of
Location of it.
the
yeah.
location, and basically with 100 south there, just the detour alone for that is upwards of 60 miles, which is creates a problem with the state of Vermont. The land conditions there's a lot of ledge, and obviously putting the bridge back is just also being, puts us in a position for that to happen again. There was a proposed look, and we started to look at extending the road from Plumley Ave all the way up to the end of Clark Drive, which would then have been a municipal road, would eliminate the bridge. But obviously with that comes a lot of conversations with landowners. There's a lot that goes into that. After some of those conversations, it just doesn't seem like a situation that's going to be palatable for all parties involved. So in the instance of, we are paying, although it is reimbursable, it's $2,000 a month for that temporary bridge that we're paying. We're moving forward with replacing that bridge as a codes and standards bridge with the state of Vermont. So that is why we have not had the public meeting regarding the alternate project. It's just, we're gonna move on and move forward with replacing that bridge in kind. So,
And you're expecting Route 100 South to be closed? Haven't gotten there yet?
that isn't a this year project.
60-mile detour will be fun for everybody involved.
And part of the problem is that I highly doubt that Route 100 will be closed.
I don't think it can be.
You can't.
Yeah.
So, but taking part of that road to make that to be codes and standards is going to be incredibly difficult.
Yeah.
Because on the other side of that is ledge. So, it's hard enough for us to get a truck out and around, but now to be able to set the pilings and et cetera and do that is going to be extremely challenging and extremely expensive.
Is there a different location, like just up the road or down the road, that would be a little better?
Not really, because you're still going to.
You're on that river.
You're on Clark Drive, so there's not really relocating that road. So, the alternate project was a good idea, but if I'm in the shoes of some of the folks that are making those decisions, I probably would make the same one. So
It's their property.
can't fault them. Tying back to FEMA, in kind of a good news situation, almost, but not quite. So we have a number of FEMA obligated projects that are now at the state level. That's, $1.59 million has been released from FEMA to the state. We expect that this week, which is good. I think it's just hung up at Vermont Emergency Management with the financial department, just because it is a significantly large, and it's about 6 different projects. So that's 1.5, almost 1.6 that the town will be getting hopefully by the end of the week.
Great job.
Which is great. That's been a long road with some of that. Little League Field reclamation began today. That's one of the projects that you'll see going on in town. Obviously, paving project in town. Last week was pretty difficult as they were adjusting a lot of the structures. So traffic was tied up all through town. Now they're continuing to do a lot of the paving at night, so I'm sure when we leave here, we'll see them out there working. Memorial Day, last Monday, tremendous success. It was a great turnout. That's really a special day here in town, so a big thanks to Legion Post 36, the cemetery department making the cemetery look fantastic. Ludlow PD, Ludlow Fire, Ludlow Ambulance, they're all there. It's a great turnout and a great, it is a great tradition here in town, so thank you to everybody involved. And the last thing is tomorrow I have a engineering meeting for the 30% engineering plans for Site 1 of the Jewel Brook Dams, the engineering project. It may not sound like a lot, but that is a big step for us. That's, again, I say 30% engineering complete. That's a huge step for us in terms of the project that is going on up there. And I'm happy to say that, we've covered a ton of ground in the last year. And this part of it is completely funded, as we mentioned before, so, next month I'll have an update on where we stand and what the next step is, but we should be happy that that is a step in the right direction regarding, our dams in town. So-
Getting that 10-year just
Yeah.
lowered every time.
Yeah, exactly, lowering it by
Yeah,
5%.
it's good.
Is that funding source seem pretty stable at the federal level?
It is, yeah.
That one's kind of
We
codified
had,
at this
we
point.
had to hold, and it was I'll thank Du Bois and King, who was our engineering firm on it, because 2 months ago, it got dicey and things were paused. And we made the decision to, speaking with Ula, looking myself, and with Du Bois and King, saying, Bob Thompson, who is with the USDA, said, the funding is not going anywhere, but it's paused right now, and we don't know for how long. Really not wanting to slow this process down even a day, he said, let's keep pushing, and if we have to kind of float some of this money, because the way it is, we get the invoices for it's completely reimbursable, so we do have to pay them. But once we get the invoice, we cut the check, send it for reimbursement, then we get the money. Du Bois and King was very good about kind of continuing the work, giving us the invoices, and we just cut them a check. It was $300,000 that was, we're just kind of trading off. But it was good because it would have slowed this process down a month and a half or 2 months, which, again, may not
We
seem
really
like a
can't
lot,
do.
but
This project needs to happen.
this is something that we need to keep doing, so I'm positive there.
Great.
Thank you, Mr. McNamara.
We will, I will send out an agenda for the meeting on the 16th at 6 p.m.
Excuse me. Thank you.
Thank you.
I noticed a couple timber in grant stuff. Is that kind of are we good? Like we own that and
Oh, no, we own it.
Why?
The problem with the issue with the timber is we still are being it's ours.
yeah.
We still are waiting to be reimbursed $95,000 for the demo and some of the site work, because since that was under Act 250 jurisdiction, we needed an Act 250 permit, which, if you know, is a nightmare.
Got it.
So now we are just waiting. The only piece we are waiting on is a planting plan. It doesn't have to be done, but we have had to contract with an engineer to have them tell us where things needed to be properly placed. I offered to do it myself, but Cherry said she didn't think it would pass.
Rats.
So we're gonna go.
We'll go with Sherry.
We'll get the 2,000 back for the plantings, but we don't need to do it. We just need the plan. So by the end of the month, I'm hoping that will be submitted, and we will be free and clear of the timber end.
Great.
Well, what if the river project ever went through? Well, where would you plant? I mean, I know you got squashed,
Yeah.
but I don't understand the plan part.
It's checking the box.
Yeah.
It just
We're
makes
putting
no sense.
dog willows and trees down there.
It'll look
It'll
great.
nice.
Yeah,
Yes.
it'll look good.
It'll look good.
All set.
I am, sir.
Okay, other business, encumber of skate park funds.
I would like to request that the select board think about encumbering the current skate park funds budget. We are hoping to do a second phase, and we could really use those funds rolled over.
What I would just request now that I think of it is that at our 16th meeting on the 16th, we do that. I will have the figure of what the number is that we will be encumbering.
Let's just
We'll
table,
have to leave.
Yeah.
let's just table that.
Yeah, so.
I don't want to speak out of turn. It's 25 or 30.
I
something like
think
that.
we should have to correct,
Mhm.
just the whole number, so.
To add to that, tree committee money for the warden, or is that on this coming budget?
That's on this coming.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Eric,
Thank you. Two things. Sorry, I was on the fence about bringing this up because it seems more I bring up, the more trouble I bring on myself. Two things that are concerning me, and I'm sorry that the planning chair left. The planning commission is now in their second year of not having an adopted rules of procedures. As we know, this is supposed to take place by statute in their first meeting. This is now year 2 that they have not adopted the rules of procedures, and there's really one sticking point on there, and that's the insistence of some language that the planning commission can dictate who is appointed to the planning commission. More concerning than that is what happened at the last meeting and the meeting before, really the last meeting. I don't think ever in the history of Ludlow or the town of Vermont or anywhere, any public meeting, that an agenda has been changed to remove public comment. And this is exactly what happened at the last planning commission meeting. The planning commission chair removed that section on the agenda, which is typically after approval of minutes, to eliminate any comment from the public. I challenged that at the meeting, why that would have been removed. There's no reason in my mind that any chair would have ever removed public comments from an agenda. I didn't get a good answer. So I want to make sure that this board is aware of that, because it was very concerning that a chair of a board would remove that agenda item that historically has never been removed, and there's no reason in my mind that it ever should be removed. But it was removed. It turned into a little bit of a contentious issue there at the meeting, because I was challenging why it would have been removed. So I'd like to ask that this board and this town insist that public comment is always on the agenda and never removed.
Excuse me, Mr. I was at that meeting, and public comments was removed from the beginning of the agenda, and it was moved to the end of the agenda. It was there.
Eric?
Other business was there. Per the statute, the language, as always, says that citizens are given a reasonable opportunity at the beginning of a meeting. The exact words, at the beginning of a meeting, not under other business. There's no reason that should have been removed, none at all.
Thank you, Mr. Alden. We should have every commission that's open to the public have a rules of procedure.
Yeah.
That
needs to be done.
That needs to be done. And that will clarify any gray area in regards to public comments.
Is it in the same vein that
Same as ours.
boards adopt the same rules of procedure that the select board?
We should have the
I think
Robert's
the
rules.
VLCT.
the updated
Yeah,
Robert's
VLCT.
rules.
Yeah, I think the
So I
VLCT
think
rules of
that
procedure.
if the select board, because again, appointing any members falls to the select board, right? So
that's
you're
the
going
case
to
they should fall under.
You're going to appoint people via that statute.
So that,
if
plus
you
if there's
wanted
any
to-
special rules for that particular,
Yes, if there's sub rules on different
And
boards
I
for
think the
procedure.
DRB is different because it's quasi judicial board.
Yes.
But any of our boards, again, I'm not speaking, this is up to the select board, any boards that the select board appoints should probably act under the same rules of procedure. I mean, that just streamlines everything.
Right.
Agree.
Bruce?
I would encourage you to read the minutes, because there's a lot from that planning commission meeting. And I think two things. One, it seems that, if you read the minutes and you look at past minutes, one reason the chair has not brought up the, doing the rules of order, is because she doesn't feel she can vote on it without the full board. So that's been mentioned. So
Thank you.
yeah, I think that there's some clarification there. And I think you need to be, you have a representative, you know, that you put onto that, to sit there and help with that. And I think you need to either start looking to what's going on, what's kind of happening, and how can we help support? Because you heard a planning commission member tell you that they need support. You know, and I think that we're talking about, you know, spending money here and there. You're talking about, there are consultants that will help, there are individual, you know, and if that planning commission needs support, because if you don't, I mean, I don't have to tell you all, you're gonna get a contentious relationship here, and you don't want that. You want this, you have someone who works very hard and doesn't seem to be in the same direction as the select board. And it's the select board's responsibility to get that and help support, in my opinion, you know, the best way that you can. You want that individual to gives a lot of time, a lot of support. So I would encourage you to work with your representative and get to the bottom of how can we help.
Yeah, we can flesh out more of that at the special meeting. I do think the rules of order point duly noted about the compromised members of the board, but yeah, that should be voted on as soon as there's a complete board there.
I don't
Or
think
do you
a
need
complete
it?
board. You don't need a complete board. You guys vote on stuff. It does need a complete board.
What's a quorum on the planning commission? Three?
You don't need a complete board.
Okay. Moving on, we got the items for the next meeting. We're gonna have the 16th.
Before you move on, I was just curious, if Mr. Alden happens to know where it says that it needs to be at the beginning of it. I've been to just because I feel like before I had the job I have now, I'd only been to meetings in Ludlow. And so I felt like I had only seen meetings done in a certain way. Now I go to a lot of select board meetings and a lot of planning commission meetings. And I do see public comments it's really, you get a mix. I feel like in Ludlow, I've always seen agendas with public comments at the beginning of the meeting. But in other towns, a lot of other towns, Springfield, I think West Windsor, maybe Windsor, definitely Springfield, they all do their public comments at the end of the meeting. All public is always allowed to be present through the entire meeting except for, executive session. But I've never seen a statute that specifically says where public comment needs to be in your agenda. And I know from experience that it is at the end of agendas for a lot of other boards in our immediate area. So just to put that out there, that I'm not exactly sure if that's in statute, but it needs to be in a specific location. And at the end of an agenda, I think is perfectly fine as far as I'm aware.
Yeah.
For what it's worth.
Was it on the agenda at the beginning?
It is, it's just in other business and it's limited to 5 minutes, which is, again, perfectly within statute, as far as I'm aware.
It's a fair point he's making. I can send some language where I saw it. The point I'm really trying to make is there was a reason why it was removed. It's not that the town is, this town or Springfield has always done it at the end. This town has always done it after the minutes. And it was eliminated, and it was a reason why it was eliminated. It wasn't that it was eliminated and moved down here.
Right.
There was a specific reason why it was taken out. That is what my concern is.
Yeah. Because we have had times that we'll bump it to the back just because there's certain topics that they want to address.
Sure.
And we don't want them, but
Yeah.
if that was the case, they should have stated why it was being
That's
done. Okay. So next meeting, sign warrant orders. I don't think we got them. Possible executive session, personnel contracts, legal issues.
Make a
possible
motion.
annual
We can
Pay
go to my
raises.
office.
I'll make a motion to go into an executive session.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, guys have it.